Pokemon. If you're alive, you know about Pokemon. Created in 1996 by Game Freak and published by Nintendo, it's a monster-catching RPG that grew to international success and spawned an anime, several movies, and spin-offs, and blah blah blah. But you might not know what a Nuzlocke is. The Nuzlocke challenge was made by Nick Franco and is a rule set to increase the difficulty of a Pokemon game by having it so that when a Pokemon faints, they are permanently removed from the party. There are also a lot of additional rules, but we'll get into those later. A while back, I was bored and wanted to play Pokemon Red, so I decided to do a Nuzlocke run just to experience the challenge for myself. And I recorded it all to keep an incentive to not just quit when things got rough. So here's what happened. Starting off, I got Bulbasaur as my starter and failed the opening fight with my rival, twice. I'm getting the impression that grass types, or at the very least Bulbasaur, aren't great. But whatever, I tried again, eventually got Denji the Squirtle, who beat the shit out of my rival with relative ease. For the start of the game, Denji is basically a living steamroller who stomps through everything, including Brock's gym. The main lesson learned from these first couple routes is that the archaic design makes things a bitch to play, and the only thing that matters is raw power. Also, you can't buy potions till Pewter City, which is fucked up. But after Gym 1, the current team is Denji the Squirtle, Jerk the Pidgey, Rodney the Rattata, Break the Jigglypuff, and Echo the Zubat. After the first gym, the next target is Misty's gym in Cerulean City. But first I have to go through Mount Moon, which was the worst. It was nothing but incredibly fast, incredibly annoying Zubat. It's a place you have to go through but can actually never leave. It's hell in 8-bit form. We lost Rodney and Jerk to the depths of Mount Moon, which was a shame because Rodney was just starting to prove his worth thanks to the game's weird-ass critical hit formula. In Pokemon, you have a chance to get a critical hit. A critical ignores any stat changes for either Pokemon, does an insane amount of damage, but it is completely random, normally. But in Gen 1, the chances of a critical hit were determined by your Pokemon's speed stat. The higher the speed, the higher chances of a critical. So Pokemon like Raticate, with decent attack and disgusting speed, are monsters in the first half of the game because they outspeed almost all the Pokemon, and everything else has pitiful defense. So losing Rodney was a tragedy for my team. Not Jerk though, Pidgey kinda stinks. But after I survived Mount Moon, I finally made it to Cerulean City and picked up Verde the Oddish. This is where I found out that my rival, Ven, is leagues above the other trainers in the game, but still not much of a challenge to my team, with the only real threat in this team being his own Rattata, which is only dangerous thanks to the critical hit formula. After taking down Ven again, I took down Misty, which wasn't super interesting, except for the fact she used an X defense, something that took me completely off guard. A gym leader using an item like that in the modern games feels unheard of. And on a critical level, this is the point where the game starts to be bearable thanks to the fact Pokemon that aren't the starter start getting stab moves. For example, Verde got the move Absorb and started putting in real work against the trainers and feels less like cannon fodder and more like Denji's sidekick. I also went to Diglett Cave to grab a Diglett named Smitty, but no matter how strong the team got, Ven always terrified me, skulking around the corner like a horror movie villain, with a Raticate that could be a run ender thanks to some bad luck. Fortunately, I was able to dog walk him again thanks to some careful tactics. After getting out of the SSN, I took down Surge, who was a total chump, and kept it pushing to Celadon City. And thanks to training on the SSN, I thought the team was ready for the next gym, but Rock Tunnel had other plans. Rock Tunnel is Mount Moon 2, back with a vengeance. This place hit even harder than before. Instead of losing 2 Pokemon, I lost 3. Smitty the Diglett, Thrash the Mankey, and Verde the Gloom. A truly tragic slaughter. Tragic! But I did catch a Geodude that a friend of mine named Johnny, named after a character from some obscure fighting game. But Mount Moon was the hardest part of this section. Erica, the gym leader of Gym 4, and Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket, were a joke compared to Mount Moon. This section of the game is also interesting because of how it starts to open up in terms of player choice. For example, in terms of location, you can choose between what the next major fight is going to be. The player gets to choose between battling Team Rocket or fighting Gym 5 and 6 in basically any order. In addition to this, Celadon also gives you a couple of picks for a new Pokemon, letting you actively pick between 3 Pokemon from the game corner and an Eevee at the department store. Like a moron, I forgot to grab any of them, but it is notable that this is one of the few times in a Nuzlocke where you can just decide what you want and pick a team member based off what you need instead of being a victim of circumstance. Saffron City is the same with how it lets you pick between Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan, or Lapras. After Celadon City, we hit up the Pokemon Tower in Ookie Spooky Lavender Town to get a Ghastly and fight Ven once more. whose power level dropped significantly thanks to him losing his Demon of Eradicate. But the next big target I had in mind was the Safari Zone in Fuchsia City, where the rules changed a bit thanks to how this section works. The Safari Zone has 4 major areas. Each area I get infinite chances to catch something, but once I catch it, that's it, and I have to move on to the next area and eventually leave once I'm out of options. Poison types suck, so Koga, the 6th gym leader, goes down like nothing thanks to Ivo the Snorlax and Robbie the Execute. It's ironic because at this point, my team was more poison than Koga's. This is also bad news because the next gym is Psychic, probably the most powerful type in the game, and I was initially terrified of fighting Sabrina, but her and the rest of the fights in this area are total chump change. The power of Denji, Ivo, and Robbie steamroll most threats. There was also this weird thing that I didn't catch on camera, but during the raid on Team Rocket's base, my Nidoran, Maple, I was watching Gravity Falls at the time, evolved at level 26. That's not meant to happen. The Nidoran line is supposed to evolve using a Moonstone. I don't know why this happened, and I couldn't find any information about it online. But hey, I got to keep a Moonstone, and the streak of good luck will continue all the way up to the final gym. Speaking of, up to this point the player doesn't even know who the 8th gym leader is. His portrait is even blacked out on the trainer card. The guy's a total mystery man, and while it isn't super surprising now, it's revealed that Giovanni, the leader of Team Rocket, is the 8th gym leader. The leader of the assholes that you've been kicking the shit out of for most of the game is the last major milestone before you hit the Elite Four. And honestly, it's a pretty neat twist. The game sets us up in the first 10 minutes with the fact you visit Pewter City and find its gym shut down because the leader's long gone. You take down Team Rocket's major operation around Gym 5 or 6, so you think you're not seeing Giovanni anymore. And the gym uses the main gimmick that the Team Rocket bases were full of. The game isn't very story heavy, but this is a really cool tidbit all the same. But after Giovanni, we're done. I mean, we kicked the shit out of Ven one final time, but other than that, it's straight to Victory Road. And there, tragedy strikes. Thanks to a 30% chance one-hit KO move, we lose Amazo the Magneton, who was kind of my only answer for the first member of the Elite Four. Well, either way, we make it to the Elite Four, with Johnny taking Amazo's place in the final team. May God rest Amazo's soul. We hardly knew you. Tragic! Although Amazo's death was tragic, we finally made it to the Elite Four. And first up on the list we have Lorelei, the master of ice types. My original plan for this fight was to hope that Amazo could sweep the water types and Ivo could handle the rest through one-hit KO moves. In Gen 1, one-hit KO moves are determined by your Pokemon's speed stat. If the stat is lower than your opponent, the move will automatically fail. But if you use the dire hit, it will turn all one-hit KO moves into 100% accuracy. My plan was to stock up on dire hits and try to one-hit kill any defensive Pokemon I came across with Ivo and Maple. That shit didn't work. Ivo got bodied by a very untimely, aka bullshit critical hit, and we fell to plan C, which was going fine until I got a real unlucky on a switch and another untimely, aka super bullshit critical hit. But we managed to struggle past this point by the combined efforts of Denji and Robbie. Making past that terrifying opening of the Elite Four, we get to the second battle against the fighting type specialist, Bruno, who is immediately rinsed by Robbie with almost no effort. The most he does is take up ammunition for Robbie's Psychic. This fight proves again that Robbie is Verde's living legacy. But since there's very little to talk about in the Bruno battle, it's time to put on my tinfoil hat and talk about why I think Brock and Bruno were meant to be related at some point in time. First off, they both share a couple of design details like the short spiky hair, eyes, and a similar manner of dress. Secondly, Bruno's team is much closer to a rock type team than a fighting type one. And lastly, Brock is the first major trainer you fight, and Bruno is one of the last. Also, their names both start with a B. I know it's not great evidence, but it's just a theory. A game! For Elite Four member number 3, we got Agatha. This battle was the worst. Those coffins aren't just for show. This old biddy put some of my mons in the ground. First off, I lost Maple, who was kind of my ace for this fight due to a misclick. And then Johnny got dropped thanks to that pesky 20 level difference. Although Maple and Johnny did fight valiantly enough to let Denji take down Agatha's final Gengar. Now it's time for the final member of the Elite Four, Lance, who is a master of Dragon-type Pokemon, which is basically totally new for the game, with the only other appearance being from winning a Dratini at the Game Corner and in the Safari Zone. And I knew Lance's type going in, so I gave Denji Ice Beam, the only weakness the Dragon type has. But Lance's fight is kind of indicative of some cool but weird design choices. Lance's team is themed around dragons even though only one dragon evolution line exists, so 2 of his Pokemon are just cool looking, non-bird flying types. But Lance's other 3 Pokemon are just 2 Dragonairs and a Dragonite, and his Dragonite is impossible to get through normal standards. So I really wish the game just stuck to breaking the rules and allowing the gym leaders to have more interesting and diverse teams instead of filling their teams with cannon fodder, because other bosses, specifically Surge, Koga, Sabrina, and Agatha, have the exact same issue. So Lance exists as this weird halfway point between an interesting fight and a boring one filled with filler Pokemon, and it sucks that the would-be final boss is like this. But ignoring the analysis, the fight was hard but simple. Spam Ice Beam and Psychic till everything dies, which did work, but Robbie died to a Hyper Beam in the process. Another tragedy. Tragic! But after all of the Dragon Rage, we're finally done, only left with Denji as the final and only member of this party. But what a twist! I wasn't the first person to beat Lance. My rival, Ven, beat me here somehow, even though he went in the opposite direction. But that doesn't matter. Now it's just me and Ven. Denji versus Bulbasaur. Just like the beginning. It's time to end it. And by end it, I mean lose. Yeah, 1 Pokemon isn't enough to beat the champion. Denji was able to beat his Gyarados, but got whammied by Alakazam. It was fun while it lasted, though. I mean, I probably could shamble together a new team out of the box, but that would take tons of grinding, and would mean refighting the Elite Four again, which would be a hassle just to get a salty run back on 1 fight. And that's the end of the run. It was a fun blast of the past, but this game really does feel its age. The difficulty of the early games feels surprisingly mean, and is based almost entirely on just using your starter to brute force your way through trainers. This is super apparent in the Team Rocket areas, where every trainer just has the exact same 3 Pokemon. The mechanics both in and out of battle just kind of feel archaic, even in comparison to other Game Boy games and RPGs at the time. But it was a cool reminder of this franchise's beginnings, and it was fun to play the game with a whole new challenge. I will admit though, the game only got hard at the very end when it decided that every fight should be 20 levels higher, but at this point I'm just coping about losing. Even with everything I said, this is still like a top 5 Game Boy games. I mean, like, it's an 8-bit system, so the pickings are slim. But number 1 is Gargoyle's Quest, go play that. Number 2 is Mario Land 2, go play that. Number 3 is Mega Man V, go play that. Number 4 is the game that comes after this. Number 5 is this game. Don't play this one. If you've ever played Pokemon, every game after this is probably better. Still, this is still fun though. If you want to see what's up, so you should try it.